Welcome, IT changemakers, to the Dex Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. Listen, I was just chatting to Tim Flower here about regular listeners may have heard me mention that Tim takes an annual kind of mega motorcycle drive of North America. Tim, how would you go and break it down for us? Where do you go exactly?
Yeah, so in 2009, it was a bucket list trip to get out to South Dakota from the East Coast. So back and forth across the country, it ends up being about over 2 weeks, about 5,000 miles. And it's been every year since. So 15, I skipped a couple COVID years, but it's been 15 years back and forth. Great group of guys we ride with when we get out there, and it's always a blast.
It sounds, I completely love the idea of it. Apart from the fact I've never driven a motorbike. But you were just telling me, Tim, that you made a really cool distinction between driving a car and being on a bike. Tell the listeners what it was.
Yeah, it started with you saying how exhausted you were after driving 9 hours up to Wales, and it's different on a motorcycle. Yeah, you're tired at the end of the day, but the difference is it's not an original line. I heard this from somebody, but the difference between doing it in a car and a motorcycle is in a car, you're sitting in a seat looking through a screen, and it's like watching a movie. When you're on a motorcycle, you're in the movie. The smell changes every 10 seconds. The temperature changes every 10 seconds. The road changes and you've got to react to it. And the drivers, some good, some idiots. The scenery changes all the time and you're part of it. So being in the movie all day is a lot different than just sitting there watching a movie. Can you imagine watching a movie for 9 hours?
No, it's a good, the ultimate example would be on a plane, right? Like that's the ultimate passivity. You're just sat there for 9 hours, more sometimes. And what do? You watch 3 movies and it drives you slightly insane, but there's no, there's a relationship.
You're trapped in that tube.
Yeah, totally. Got to welcome our guest, man, Sean Thomas. Welcome. And Sean, you got to help me. I need an analogy. Tim was saying all this cool stuff. I was like, is there a way I can tie this to Dex?
It's a different experience. It's an individual experience, right? We can tie it to experience.
In IT, and you don't have Dex. It's passive. You're on the plane. And if you have Dex, you're on the motorbike. What do you think, Sean? What do you think?
Well, and I think also it was interesting when you did talk about the smells and all of that. I think that's one of the things you realize. I mean, I do a lot of biking and or walking, you just kind of, you're more involved in it. You do smell those things and kind of brings you back to when you were, I guess, younger and weren't in a car all the time. You saw those things and smelled them. So I get that with the whole overall experience.
We were riding through, I'll give you a quick story. We were riding through, it was either Iowa or Nebraska. It was my first year on the trip. And we're riding through, we stopped for gas, and I turned to my buddy Steve. I said, Steve, I smell pancakes. It's the weirdest smell. Out in the middle of nowhere. We're in cornfields and cattle country. And why do I smell pancakes? And he looks over at the silo. He says, Tim, that's corn syrup they're making over there. So it's just the smell of the corn and the corn syrup smell just like pancakes. But it's that kind of thing you don't really get when you're in the car.
Oh, beautiful. And I can think of some way, Sean, to tie this into your introduction and welcome you to the show, because one thing that always stood out to me when I was researching today's show, it's just really inspired by the signature in your email, which is a beautiful kind of motto or sentiment, which is success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. And it's something we'll touch upon it a bit that seems to sort of pervade a lot of your thinking and work about Dex, right? But you currently with Edge Solutions and Consulting, Managing Director of EUEM Business. I mean, maybe tell us a bit about Edge and yourself to begin with.
Sure. So, first off, thanks for having me on the podcast. And, I love what you guys do with this and, just very happy to be here. So Edge Solutions and Consulting, Edge for short, we're a value-added reseller, women-owned business. We've been in business for a little over 25 years now. And, it may sound, salesy or trite, but we really do focus, when we say value-added reseller, we really do focus on the V part of that. And that's bringing value for both our customers and our vendors. And I think we can do this because our philosophy as a company is to really closely partner with best of breed vendors within key market space. And then we build an expertise and process around these solutions. we live and die with the vendor and their solution. If a customer wants a different product, we don't have a portfolio of products that we go to that's in that same space. We've had we've lost opportunities where customers have liked us, but want us to bring them a different product, maybe a competing product. So although we may lose this, it builds a strong vendor partnership, greatly strengthens our relationship with the vendor. And in reality, it allows us helps us get better pricing and perks from the vendor for our customers. So I think it brings value on both sides. And, our business model, we're not a CDW or an SHI where we can be experts on everything. We can't, and we also can't cultivate this loyalty that helps our customers. So our overall business at Edge, some of our key pillars, we have mainframe managed services. So we've built a team of top mainframe engineers where IBM will often outsource to our team. We've built a practice around the inventors of the converged infrastructure solution, Nutanix. So we were partnering with them even before people knew what converged infrastructure was. And then about 8 years ago, we formed our partnership and built a practice around the number one DEX vendor in the market, NextThink. NextThink has the perfect product and it's the perfect market space for our business because it's not a transactional engagement like maybe a storage array where you sell and move on. It requires this close partnership with our customers to help them, get the value of the product. So that really fits our model. And, Edge is sometimes referred to as, a boutique VAR. I don't know if I'm a fan of that term because it almost sounds like we're the small little company that tinkers with these IT solutions. But we really are a powerhouse and have an high impact team for the solutions we do offer. We have a proven framework. We deliver results with it, whether it's mainframe or converged infrastructure or in the DEX space.
That's all great stuff, Sean. Many thanks. And how about that notion that success, I repeat, is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success, which I thought of because of Tim's passion for biking and your passion for biking and real world pursuits and hobbies and enthusiasms. But I do feel like it says something about you as an individual professional. Do you feel that it's reflective of your approach to DEX, and how does your life philosophy guide your work and your leadership?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, maybe it's a cop out. So if I'm not successful, I can say, well, at least I'm happy. But, and it's it doesn't mean I would, I have a son. I wouldn't message to him that, stay in the basement and play video games, all day long, as long as you're happy. That's not what I'm saying. But, my background was product marketing. I don't think I'm naturally a salesperson. In fact, I think when I first got into sales, people probably were questioning that for me because by nature, I'm more quiet and introvert. But I do remember, early when I was in my sales career, maybe I just lost the deal, but kind of thinking, do I need to put on an act that was typically common for a successful salesperson? And, whether I could do this was very questionable. But, would that make me more successful at sales and would I be happy doing this? And I just decided, and it was probably more out of inability or laziness, to just be who I was, work with the customers that resonated better with me. Maybe I could have sold more if I was more of a salesperson, but just customers that fit with my personality. And I still don't think I'm a good salesperson. I think I'm a good account manager. And that means, supporting the needs of my customers. And I think this shows, where customers I've had for 20 plus years and ones that I'm happy to work with. So I think that's what success is for me.
And I think that for me, Sean, that notion of happiness converting to success resonates a lot. Some of my early success at NextThink was because I was just happy to be here, happy to be at a small but really growing company 10 years ago. And I made a similar transition from enterprise IT into sales and marketing role, but it was more about being successful in telling stories and the happiness behind those stories, I think, comes through. So I think it's that happiness connected to success, I think, makes a ton of sense. The other thing that you and I have talked a lot about and that you highlight frequently is the connection between personal health and IT health. We've socialized it a lot, especially in the context of proactive IT. Happy and healthy people are more productive and less of a cost burden on the healthcare system, and likewise for enterprise IT. But unpack your thinking there a little bit more for us.
Sure. So, of course, as I get later in my life and in my career, I'm always attracted to reading these, the articles on such things as, how much money do I need to retire? When should I apply for Social Security? These kind of questions. And often it comes down to, health insurance. And, I've read multiple times, and it's nothing I came up with, but health equals wealth when you're thinking about as you get older and trying to be healthy. And we've, you bike, I bike, all these things that we do that, keep us healthy. And, it's pretty simple statement. If you keep yourself healthy and stay on top of it, you can save yourself a lot of money in medical expenses. Of course, we're not going to eliminate getting sick, but there are things you can do to reduce these ailments, find them sooner. That can save you, thousands, hundreds of $1,000s in medical bills and prescription drugs. So, I do my walking or running, and I track these with Strava, and I'm always kind of looking at that. And one of the stats I saw was that from the American Heart Association that said that individuals who engage in this regular physical activities and track their health, they save on average about $2,500 in healthcare costs. So not only saving money, but you're feeling better. All this about health. This isn't a men's fitness podcast, but when you start looking at it in regards to DEX, I was on one of my morning walks, and I started to think about the parallels with DEX management using NextThink, and how companies are looking to use all this visibility and metrics to help them be preventative, proactive, and supporting their company's health. And of course, as I think of DEX and NextThink while I'm exercising too. But as we're getting sick, you're not going to eliminate all the issues in your environment. You can reduce the IT issues and resolve them before they become very expensive. And this proactiveness and preventative. But the NextThink platform gives companies the metrics to see these issues and address them beforehand before they become major issues. So carrying forward this same logic, better IT health translates into more wealth for companies. And another stat I saw where Forrester was saying, I think it was, companies that are investing in these tools are getting an ROI of about 200% over 3 years and a payback period of less than that. So it really does bring value. And, we're willing to invest in gym memberships and with our own personal money, health tracking device, because we know the cost outweigh the benefits. The benefits outweigh the cost. So, right. For far less amount per employee per year, these, companies that invest in a DEX platform, which can diagnose and automatically resolve many of these IT issues, which lead to increased productivity, reduced support costs, lower employee turnover, it pays for itself. So IT health does translate also into company wealth.
Yet it's actually an experience I had early on in my career here at NextThink, and I've told the story many times. Probably you've told it here on the podcast too. But I was at a healthcare facility with our sales reps early in the sales cycle, and I had a senior IT leader and a senior finance leader in the room, and started making that parallel to the finance of healthcare. Happy, healthy people, they see their doctor, they have an apple a day, they exercise, they eat right, they stay out of the hospital, they're not as sick as often, and they're not only are they more productive themselves, but the society is more productive as a whole, and they're all less of a burden on the healthcare system. And the same thing goes in IT. And we had a really great conversation about those parallels with those two leaders in the room, and I think it was really enlightening not just for me as part of that conversation, but for them as well. And it really leads, that kind of storytelling, I think, leads to success. I'll talk a little bit about proactive IT. As many folks know, I was a customer before coming to NextThink. We implemented proactive IT. It was over 10 years ago now, and it was through a proactive services team. We were very deliberate about it. It was specific to a role specific for them. They weren't pulled away on other things. But even just 5 years ago, proactive IT still felt aspirational for many, or a niche idea. But today it's everywhere. What do you think what's the reason for seeing that shift now, and why it's accelerated so dramatically?
It's so true. I mean, in our early discussions with customers, it's changed a lot in the last 3 to 5 years, where, initially, more than 3 or 5 years ago, we were spending a lot of our conversations explaining what DEX was and the value of DEX. Now, most people pretty much know what DEX is, or at least the ones that we're talking with. And so we spend less time educating them and just talking about the value. And I don't know, I think that maybe a combination of things that's driving it from being this niche solution to more mainstream. And, I think initially, long gone are the days of IT just providing, this Ethernet port in an office, employees connecting their desktop PC, whether it's or client server. Today you've got employees connecting VPNs, Wi-Fi devices running, all these different security agents, SaaS applications, video conferencing, and connecting from anywhere, remotely anywhere. And then employees also expecting, no matter what, that they have to have that same kind of connection if they're sitting in the office next to the data center, and to carry out their job. So, and these technologies, they didn't just appear in the last 3 to 5 years, but I guess maybe it's the cumulative effect that have led to this, much more complex IT. They're all these tools that are currently out there to look at the network, to look at the application. They have been there, but they're looking at it in isolation, not holistically or mapping it all together. Just because an app monitoring tool says that the application working fine doesn't translate into that employee being able to use it. Maybe their Wi-Fi connection's bad or whatever. So I think companies are really realizing this isolation view is not strong enough to do what they need to do. So, they realized they didn't have this comprehensive view. And at the same time that this is going, I think, the analysts were also seeing it, which really has helped move us along. You got Forrester and Gartner just in the last 3 to 4 years have both come out with multiple reports, magic quadrants, defining the market leaders in the space, which of course NextThink has been defined on every one of these as the top solution. So I think these analyst reports also help legitimize this space and make it become more mainstream over the last few years. And I think also that they're talking about, really to get a competitive edge, that they're, the companies are looking more at DEX. So I don't know, I think it's a combination of the complexity, people realizing they need that overall view, and the analyst also legitimizing it.
Yeah, so you guys are doing a really good job in that. It's still a bit of an evangelism piece of work, although it is always good to hear. We're hearing it more and more that it's less so that now as it is talking about value and operationalizing and all the kind of the nitty gritty stuff. But even with all that momentum and the analyst support, there's still barriers to making a change. Change is difficult, especially when you've been doing something the same way for 30 years. So what's your view in terms of the biggest barriers that get in the way of achieving the aspiration?
I guess maybe 2 things come to mind. First, because DEX is still this new technology, there's not a lot of industry knowledge out there when you compare it to other solutions, whether it's servers and storage, security, backup. So these have been out there a while. There's a lot of people in the market space that can help Some companies aren't exactly sure how to go about implementing and using the powerful solution like NextSync. And of course, with very little effort, you can plug in NextSync and get visibility and start getting some basic value out of it, but maybe not what the company's looking for or all that they're looking for. So to really capitalize on this, companies really need to invest in the people in the process first. I don't know if that's anything, great bit of advice, but I think it's key that they just have to invest in the people in the process for a strong DEX strategy. And unfortunately, sometimes DEX is an afterthought for the IT person that's even, the one person that is looking at DEX in the company, and maybe it's their second or third job instead of their primary job. I have used this analogy before. Maybe it's a little too simplistic, but I sometimes think of customers ask me, so how many people do you need to set on this? Well, if you really want to get value, that will translate by how much effort you put into it. And I think of, Microsoft Excel. Most of us can use it. You use it for creating lists, use it for some basic adding and subtracting in spreadsheets. But we know the program's so much more powerful and can be so much more value with with its formulas and Visual Basic. And it really depends on how much effort a person invests in using the application or getting real strong value. And you've probably seen these people that you have this real multiple tabs. It's real complex, and they plug in one number and automatically updates everything because they've kind of put in the work up front. Maybe it took some time up front, but the value is quickly seen, and it's also recurring once they put that work in. So if companies can take the time up front with NextSync, the value is large and recurring. I think the second barrier is really the speed to get things done with DEX is, our networks, our solution engineers at Edge are constantly telling me that when I talk to them about putting in a use case, we can build and implement this really quickly and get it all done. But inevitably the rollout of it with the customer is delayed to some kind of company approval process. And I'm not suggesting you remove these safeguards, but by adopting and developing processes around DEX, it can really speed up this time to value. So I think those are kind of at least the two things I can come up offhand as affecting the quickly coming to see value.
It's actually a good segue because we've spent quite a bit of time recently developing this operating model called DexOps. I'm still looking for the ways to potentially take this to the next level in terms of maybe even an ITIL type of a framework. But it addresses these operational questions, the people, process, technology, value, communication. But when we look specifically, Sean, at the technology piece, what should leaders be thinking about when it comes to technology selection? You as a vendor have obviously done your own selection process and who you want to affiliate yourself with. But what is that for a customer or a prospective customer looking to get into DEX? Is it all about features and functions that give you the right outcomes? Or conversely, do those features and functions not matter because it's a bigger picture? What are your thoughts, just kind of high level, about technology selection?
Yeah. And I think you've mentioned, I think you realize that, of course, I'm biased towards the NextSync platform. And, I think NextSync is one of the very few companies that design their solution from day one to be a DEX management tool. It's not like NextSync had a network monitoring tool or an application monitoring tool. And before, DEX was mainstream. And then once that became more popular, they just added a few functionalities and marketing words to jump into the space. Their product was always defined as a DEX solution, and looking at from the end user's point of view. So the foundation of everything it does is looking at it from the employee's side, whether it's getting the metrics of their capability to use the IT service provider, whether it's getting their feedback, whether it's automating things, preventative. It's all looking at it from the employee's point of view, which is, I think, very important to the DexOps side. And I think, on the technology, I think that's kind of my thought on that. If you're also looking at how to do the processes or the team around it, as far as personnel for DexOps, I don't know if there's any hard rules. If I were starting my Dex team or drafting my fantasy Dex team, I think my first pick would really be somebody that's, well-rounded and a strong IT generalist from end-to-end, infrastructure. I think that's kind of what I would pick. And it doesn't mean I don't think a network or an application SME would not be good as well. But I think it has to have that somebody that understands that end-to-end point of view to really, help kind of, get this implemented and understands all the different pieces involved.
So lastly, Sean, obviously proactive IT plays a big part in the aspiration of everything we're talking about. But what about the next stage? Some people are calling it preventative IT. Interested in hearing what this looks like to you, what the evolution of proactive IT looks like in the next couple of years, and the role AI plays in that development.
I can't count, how many times, I've had a new Nexthink customer say something like, we love how Nexthink provides us, all this user data and how it shows us, with alerts and issues, and that's great. But, how can I use Nexthink to tell us exactly why we have these issues and tell us exactly what we need to do to fix it? And our answer in the past has always been, Nexthink still requires some IT skills with some, deductive reasoning to take this Nexthink data and be proactive and even preventative in addressing these issues. But, if you've been following the space and Nexthink, our responses have been evolving on this as the Nexthink product has evolved, and as it adds more AI capabilities into it, we've started to be able to answer this with a little bit, I think maybe more customer friendly. First you got, Experience Central dashboard. It shows, what items are affecting the Dex score negatively now, and provides guidance on how to address that, which is what our customers are looking for, to be more proactive and preventative. Nexthink Assist model, which is the LM tool built right into the Nexthink tool. Now you can have IT just type in natural language using specific questions, again, to be guided on where to go. And we're always talking with the Nexthink product managers and following to see what's next. And it does seem like there's a lot more powerful new AI capabilities that are going to be rolled out in the next 6 months. And I think more of this is pushing towards helping provide end users, not just with the data, but what to do with that data, and helping them be more proactive and preventative with the powerful Nexthink data. So that's the stuff that we're looking and pretty excited about seeing that and showing that to our customers.
That's awesome, Sean. And I've always been fond, personally, of that analogy between proactive approach to health or prevention, as being better than the cure, and a proactive approach to the digital workplace. So really enjoyed your unpacking that thoroughly and properly. If anybody wants to reach out to you, to Edge, where should they go?
They can go to our Edge website, edgesolutionsconsulting.com. That's, I guess,
it's a good place to start.
Yes.
Right to the sword.
Links in the show notes, my friend. Sean, thank you so much for coming on. I did hear this was your podcast debut, so I think you did extremely well. And
great job.
Thanks for making us your first, Sean. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.